Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel. Our panel is called Repping for Reading, and we're going to be talking about reading diversely or consciously becoming more diverse readers. I am your moderator. So I am Salve, and I run a booktube channel called Cuckoo for Books. And I'm also one of the team members of Bookworms Unite, which is a nonprofit that aims to foster the love of reading among the Filipino youth. So once a year, we have meetups, events. Last year, we held our very first author event, which was for Randy Rabai's Patron Saints of Nothing. And today we have two speakers, KB and Shealea. Hi, guys.
Hello. Okay, so hi, I'm Shealea. I'm from Shut Up Shealea, where it's a blog where I talk about books, media, and lifestyle. I also founded a Caffeine Book Tours, which is a freelance tour company that aims to connect marginalized authors and the readers that they're trying to represent in their stories.
Hi, Shealea, and hi, Salve. I'm KB. I'm first and foremost a reader. I'm also a creator and editor, and I'm also the founder of Bookbed, which is a community that does all the things you mentioned and more. So basically, we talk about books and support creators, especially our very own Filipino and indie creators. So we have book drives, we have a platform for writers and readers and other sorts of creators.
Welcome, guys. Let's make this chat or this panel really just more of a conversation. So, we'll all butt in, we'll all contribute. But first, let's define what does reading diversely mean. The definition I learned being in the bookish community for about the past 5 years is those who are POC authors. I think KB shares the same definition, like those who share an experience different from yours, and the diverse books that are not the ones in the mainstream. So LGBTQ stories, POC authors, those from marginalized communities that aren't within the history of media usually traditionally been given the spotlight. And reading diversely means actively seeking out those stories that are not usually told. Yes.
Sabi na lahat ni Salve.
Salve. Nothing else to add. Did very well.
Miss Universe answer.
No, but you guys, I'm sure, I know Shealea has been a passionate advocate for reading diversely, so I'm sure she has more to say on the subject.
Okay, so I guess to add, we can talk a little bit more about what does diversity mean in the context of literature, right? So in our everyday lives, when we use the word diverse, it refers to having a variety of different options available and you can freely select from them. So applying that to literature, it means that for literature to be diverse, there needs to be a wide range of available stories featuring characters and authors from all walks of life, including those that we rarely encounter on page. And historically, more often than not, these rarely encountered stories are experiences, stories from communities na hindi laging pinapakita sa mainstream sort of media and such. So ito yung mga people of color, authors from the LGBTQ spectrum, those who fall in the autism spectrum, neurodiversity, those with disabilities, and so on and so forth. And so the larger call for diversity in literature is a call for equal accessibility and opportunity for those authors to have a legitimate platform that's as big, that's as accessible as those that have been present for more privileged authors. And so on a more personal level, diversifying your reading means consciously consuming these stories about marginalized characters, especially those that are written talaga or come from talaga those who experience those firsthand.
Yeah, simply put, just look at your bookshelf. If your stories there just look like you or about you, then you're not reading diversely enough. You have to go out and be proactive, kagaya nga ni Salve. You really have to look for them because at this time, sobrang daming content na nako-consume natin, na-encounter natin. You have to be smart about it and intentional.
Parang I saw nga that tweet na there's there's so much info online that if you still don't know it, parang kasalanan mo na. Like, for you not to go out and actively look for it, because it's all available. Pero, for those who want to make that first step, ano yung first step nila, would you say, to where do they start? Is it with the movies they watch, the books they read? What would you guys say to that?
I think it's hard to think of a way that applies to everyone because I feel like, tayo, we all have different experiences kung bakit tayo naging diverse readers. So I guess I'm just gonna share mine and then from there, like, give tips na lang or something. So for me, it was a bit accidental. I've heard of, like, diverse books, right? And then I've heard of the call for having these stories out there, but it wasn't really something that really struck me until I read a particular book in 2018, and that was The Bone Witch by Rin Chupeco. So this is the first. It's not the first diverse book I read, but it is the first Asian-inspired fantasy that I picked up. And I guess since it draws from Asian culture and is written by a Filipino author, it connected with me in a way that most books I've read didn't. And that was when it was the closest I felt to being seen on page. And then it was such, like, a huge moment for me because not only did this become my favorite book, but it also made me question a lot of things. Like, it really encouraged me to reflect on, first, what is good writing, right? Like, what is good writing? What does representation mean? And what's the impact of representation for people like me who've never really seen themselves out there? So it really made me question things. And from there, it was basically my starting point to being more critical about what I consume and whom I'm supporting. So I think the best way to start reading diversely is really to look for something that's close to home, something that is part of you or that you can see yourselves in it. And then from there, I think once you find something that connects with you, you're going to want more. And when you want more, you're going to find more. And then naturally, you're going to expand your reading.
Yeah. Actually, the thing that took me by surprise was, for me, choose books na mako-cosplay mo as Filipino readers. Mako-cosplay mo for Halloween. Kasi I remember reading Asian fantasy for the first time and going like, wow, out of all the years of, reading about Annabeths and Hermiones and, na, okay, I guess I can cosplay them, but I can't really look like them. And then reading Asian characters and like, wow, pasado ako for Halloween, So for me, that was my entryway into reading more diverse books. But what about you, KB? What do you think the first step should be, or what was your first step?
Wait lang, na ano ko dun sa sinabi mo na hindi natin kamukha si na Hermione, hindi ba natin kamukha si Darna? I mean, meron naman tayo superhero of our own. Siguro somehow, I started young kasi nung bata pa lang ako, lola na ngayon. But bata pa lang ako, supportive na kasi yung parents ko in terms of exposing us to different things. And by different things, I mean etong mga comics, o diba, buhay pa. So naghanap ka ba, Shealea, ng fantasy? Eto na, yun yung mga una kong nabasa. Tapos syempre, I grew up in a religion practicing family, mayroon akong Bible stories. So yun sa mga books na nakikita ko na iba yung itsura nila sa akin. Tapos yung mga nandun, nakita ko rin na iba yung itsura nila dun sa iba ko pang nababasa. Nung grade school din, ewan ko kung sa schools nyo, merong dumarating na mga publishing houses, tapos bebentahan kayo, meron kayong listahan. Pag uwi sa bahay, di ba, check mo to, pabili, gusto ko nito, ganyan. I can't really pinpoint a book, but all my life, and these are just some of our books here at home na we read pretty diversely, but we can always improve on it. And I think any time is a good start. And as we said, that you have to look closely where you are, your surrounding, at yourself, your own bookshelf. May 7 continents tayo, meron tayong hundreds of cultures and countries. Tingnan nyo kung meron kayong obsession ngayon sa K-pop, charot. So, if you want to read more East Asian, diba, East Asian stuff, go ahead and just try and find if it's in your interest. And then at the same time, you also get to support these creators who are producing stories na different from what's what's on the best-selling list or dun sa mga bookstore displays.
Super agree. Well, you mentioned that supporting these creators. So, we've been talking about doing it, about reading diversely. Pero what is the why? Why should we? What are the effects on creators, on us as readers? So, bakit nga ba? Why do we have to read diversely?
Whenever you purchase a book that has marginalized characters or has a diverse cast of characters, or whenever you buy a book written by a person of color or a queer author, you're basically telling the industry that this is the kind of story that I want to read. Like there is a demand that exists for these stories, and that would incentivize them to continue publishing those kinds of stories. I think a good concept to introduce here is the idea of books as mirrors and windows. So essentially, um, books can be mirrors in the sense that whenever you pick up a book, the character or their experiences reflect experiences that you yourself have had in your life, and you can see yourselves in them. And then on the other side, books can also be an opportunity for you to see a worldview that's not yours. So it's like, you're inside your house, you open a window, and then you see the outside world that's not your own, but there's something about it that you can connect with or something that you find interesting. So having said that, the problem with if, for example, if we publish the same books with the same stories and the same narrative and basically the same experiences, you're basically offering the same mirror for everyone to use. And the problem with that is that we don't look the same. Like tayo mismo tayong tatlo, we don't look the same. And you don't see yourself represented in like all the mirrors that you pick up. It can be frustrating, diba? Kasi nga the point of it is to see yourself. And when you never see yourself, it can be frustrating. And on the other hand, when you read the same books, you're basically staring at the same view. It gets tiring, right? And then you also get frustrated. I think a good example of this is, outside of books is, I don't know about you, but I grew up with Disney. I'm a proud Disney kid, even though Disney is a corporation that we don't want to support. But I grew up with their books. I grew up with their movies pala. And their first batch of Disney princesses were the three icons. So that's Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, and Cinderella. And as you can see that they have a lot of similarities. They're all conventionally attractive, straight white women who, they're envied for their beauty, and then something bad happens to them, and then they overcome that bad thing through magic of some sort. They end up with a happily ever after with a prince. So yun yung parang sila yung naging mold because they were the first ones out there and they were the ones dominating like the media, like the movies that we see as kids. And I mean, later on we did get other characters like Princess Tiana, Mulan, Jasmine, and more recently we got Moana, who is like closer to us compared to like all the other princesses. But when you look at all these Disney princesses as a whole, like if you line them up, you can see that princesses like Snow White, like those who fit that mold of being white and straight and conventionally attractive and having this kind of story, they still outnumber the princesses who aren't part of that mold. So what we're trying to do with diversity isn't to like get rid of the existing princesses, but to have stories that are just as many and just as accessible as those. So we want Moana to have like the same number of like to have the same platform as the ones before who have been dominating again, like what we've been seeing.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, especially the part where you have to see yourself in the stories that you consume. So it's really important because we people tend to forget. And so we read diversely so that you have that understanding of yourself and also of other people.
What's interesting is that oftentimes we don't realize that we're hungry for representation. Like we don't actively look for it, and then we don't realize that we're actually like grabbing onto scraps or fragments that we see on whatever's available. So for example, for the longest time, my favorite princess was Mulan because she was like the only Asian princess there, but she's not Filipino, she's Chinese. And of course, like their culture is very different from ours. Their experiences are different from ours. I did not have to like take my dad's place in a war, but still I saw myself in her somehow because there were things or small things about her that I could relate to. So I think for the longest time, we've been like so happy with these fragments, especially when Moana came out and we saw na, oh, she's she has a connection to the water, and they're sailing, and we have that history as well. But Pacific Islanders aren't Asians, they're not Filipino, so it's still not the exact same thing. And I think it would be more impactful and more meaningful to us, but to us, if we stop getting fragments and instead we get like a whole complete mirror that's really for us.
Yeah, parallel to that, ma'am, can I speak?
No! Ma'am, dito. Ano ka ba, Casey?
But no, parallel to that, I mean, we don't even need to go that far because here in the Philippines, we are so diverse and multicultural. That's also another tip on where to start and when to start. Look at what's happening around you and see if you can find any literature that you can consume freely. And then ang challenge natin are access to all the things. How do we really choose kung ano yung i-consume natin and who to support? We need to identify who these creators or what works these are so that we can provide the space for them to shine.
Parang inisip ko lang, like, imagine the kids right now who aren't reading yet, they're too young, but they grow up, reading the characters that they could imagine themselves as. I read a tweet the other day. It was from Mina Esguerra, who is one of the creators of the romance class community, and she brought something up. Na they write in the romance class community. They write Filipino characters set in the Philippines mostly, but it's written in English. And she was saying that she made a really conscious effort to have their protagonists come from all walks of life, from all career paths, because on the global stage, Filipinos are stereotyped quite often, and that's why she made a conscious push to have the careers of their main characters be different and varied, so everyone can see themselves, and we can have that kind of diversity within all age demographics. Then imagine the kids who are growing up and then they're like, I can be this kahit na I'm from, it shouldn't even be kahit na, like it should be I'm Filipino and I can be the first Filipino astronaut or whatever. And I think a lot of that starts from because I mean all of us started as child readers entire life. So imagine nga if those child readers growing up now in a diverse environment of reading. So imagine what they can achieve.
Yes. Speaking of romance class, i-plug ko lang iba kong romance class dito.
Yeah.
And I found some of my diverse books, children's books. So these are by Mindanao authors. So eto naman galing sa UNICEF yung iba. Ito, it's about the war. And here's another one. If we're talking about fantasy, we have all our own, world of Manananggal and all the This one is by Sari Sari Storybooks, not sponsored, but, baka naman. So, may translation to ng English at saka Cebuano. So, this would be fun for kids. So, they can also learn Kapampangan, Cebuano, Ilocano.
For the non-readers, because I think it's been established in this panel now, we're all very, very much big bookworms, but those who are casual readers or who might not be into reading as much as we are, how would you encourage them to? The bestseller list is great, but look at these authors who have other stories to tell. How would you go about it?
For me, I'm like the forefront of convincing my friends to read because I don't really have a lot of reader friends in college, right? So what I do is that I ask them, what kind of stories do you like? Like when you watch, like what are your favorite films? What are your favorite anime? And then from those favorites, what specifically do you like about them? So it could be a trope, it could be like a sort of like trait that the character has, and I try to match those with the books that I know. So I think if you're a casual reader, you can start with that. So for example, your favorite book is Mad Max, right? And then Rin Chupeco has a book that uses that as a comp title, so that's The Never Tilting World. It's kind of like Frozen meets Mad Max. So there are actually like you can use that as a tool to like help you find the books that can interest you. Like what other forms of media do you consume and what's the book equivalent of those?
Following that, talagang effective yung magregalo ka ng libro. Tapos, tanungin mo sila kung what they thought about it. Kailangan may follow-up ka, tsaka kailangan bigyan mo rin sila ng platform kung saan pwede nilang gawin yun. And not just like recommend, and recommend, o kaya like buy. You have to be interactive about it, and you have to show them na it's not just about requiring you to read, but making them understand that this is also for you and that you
Yeah.
should enjoy this whole experience.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Before we carry on, I just wanted to give each of us a chance to rec certain diverse reads that they've loved. So, does anybody want to go first?
Okay, I'll just do very quickly. So first, context, I am a huge fan of fantasy. So the recommendations that I picked out for this one are my favorite fantasy books, and therefore, I'm trying to cover all age groups, and also they're all written by Filipino authors. So I think they're worth checking out. So for middle grade, I have Lalani of the Distant Sea by Erin and Chad Kelly. For YA or young adult, I have The Bone Witch by Rin Chupeco, but since I mentioned that a lot, you can also start with Wicked As You Wish by Rin Chupeco. And then for adult, I have here The Wolf of Oriñaro by K.S. Villoso.
Nako, I don't know where to start. Siguro, one would be this. This is one of my favorite coming-of-age books. This also has a film adaptation, nonfiction, but because I'm from Davao, I want to represent. So if you want to read diversely, we will leave links to our recommendation, diba, Salve?
Yes. Yes, we will. We will have links because we will be doing more intricate posts on our respective platforms. So ahead on shutupshalea.com, bookbed.org, and on my channel. For my recs, I just had three recommendation, also the same as Shealea in each demographic. For the children's books, I really wanted to recommend this. These are the books I grew up with. The Girl Who Fell from the Sky. It's a collection of Filipino folk tales. And then for YA, I really wanted to recommend this, which is Mirage by Shealea Iral. And for and then for adult or general fiction or romance rather, I wanted to bring up a romance class title, which is Keeping Miss Kalila by Tara Frejas. So those are my three recs. Any final thoughts or comments?
Shealea?
For me, I'd like to leave this on a note that right now, it's very uncertain times. A lot of us are still at home. A lot of us are like, a lot of the things we usually do, we can't really do. So I think right now is actually the perfect time to diversify your reading. Right now is the time to like try new things, and that includes trying out new stories, delving into works by new authors that are unfamiliar to you.
Yay! Also be intentional in the way you pick up things or pick up books, and you have to also look at how it impacts you.
I guess I also want to say na one step at a time, tiny steps. I know we've probably been like, oh, here are all the books, but every little step counts, and it's a never-ending evolution, and it's a journey. With that, the panel is closed, and we will open up the floor for the Q&A, but we will also be hosting a giveaway in the Q&A. Thank you guys. Thank you, KB and Shealea, for sharing your thoughts. Bye, guys.